As you may have guessed from the opening clip, we're going to make the spiderweb of connections between Trump, his minions, and Russia our primary topic this episode. But we also recognize there are other important things going on that may get overshadowed by that topic. So for today's Broadside, I'm going to mention a few things that you might want to keep an eye on as the Russia story evolves. We don't have to wait until 2018 for elections that reshape the political landscape. Because Trump is pulling cabinet members from the House, there are expected to be something like 5 special elections in the next few months in California, Georgia, Kansas, Montana, and South Carolina. The one gaining the most attention right now is the Georgia race, because Trump's appointment of Tom Price to the Department of Health and Human Services left the 6th district seat open. It's, as one expects, a red seat, but Trump barely carried it in the general election and lost in the primary to Rubio. 538 describes this as, quote, our first real test of whether Democrats can make inroads into traditionally red districts that were wary of Trump, end quote. If Jon Ossoff, who's the favored Democrat, can make even a good showing, it can give us some hope that we can flip the balance of power. It's also likely that Trump's approval rating can have an impact on this race. And as we've pointed out, his approval rating, aside from a slight bump after his first joint address to Congress, seems likely to continue to fall as he flounders in a sea of scandal and stupidity. We encourage you to look further at the candidates in these upcoming races and throw them support if you can. If we need to resist one seat at a time, we can, and we will. Speaking of Trump's joint address to Congress, in reviewing the text of it for the Broadside, I noticed that 1, he spent a lot of time filleting himself. 2, he spent a lot of time saying the same shit he's been saying since his campaign. 3, he spent a lot of time blowing dog whistles for the extreme right, but not actually giving them any red meat. And 4, he spent a lot of time saying shit that ranged in truth from sorta true but more nuanced than he can articulate to total bullshit. NPR has provided an annotated copy of his speech that gets more into detail than I can manage within the limits of the Broadside. But because they're NPR, they're not nearly as vicious as I would have been. The Washington Post was a bit more specific about the nature of Trump's inaccuracies and false claims. Both will be linked in the show notes. One of my biggest issues with this speech is the number of people, conservative and liberal, that praised the fact that he managed to get through a speech someone else wrote, that he read from a teleprompter, and that contained virtually nothing of substance, somehow made him presidential. Given the vocal opponents of participation trophies, it's hard to take the praise seriously. He probably shouldn't get brownie points just for not saying something grossly stupid during a prepared statement. For fuck's sake, if your dog routinely tears up your house and shits on your couch, he probably doesn't get a doggy treat for not doing it when you've got him kenneled. As expected, his presidential speech did skyrocket his approval rating from 42% on February 27th all the way up to 43% on March 1st. Now, his disapproval rating did drop from 54% on February 27th all the way down to 51%. So I guess he has that going for him. Why is this important? Aside from further demonstrating what we've said about nobody liking the guy, it provides further evidence that he doesn't measure up to even the weakest of the modern presidents. Feel free to check out the first addresses of the last 5 presidents. We'll have a link in the notes. Obama, on the week of his first address, February 24th of 2009, was 64% approval, 23% disapproval. W, in the weeks around his first address, was around 62-63% approval and 21-22% disapproval. Bill Clinton, in the week following his address, was 59 and 29. Gallup didn't break down George H.W. Bush or Reagan by date range, but their average approvals were approximately 61% and 53%, respectively. So to reiterate, people still don't like this fucking guy, even after he gave his first big boy speech. Speaking of not liking the guy, Iowa's own Governor Terry Branstad has indicated that the failure of his bid to remove licensure requirements for social workers, mental health therapists, and other professionals to even advance out of committee shouldn't be seen as a reason to stop trying. After all, why should we burden the people who deal with the most vulnerable Iowans with silly requirements for education, training, or experience? The response to his proposed House bill was so negative that Representative Bobby Kaufman, a Republican from Wilton, literally tore up the bill in the subcommittee meeting, saying, quote, "There is zero appetite in the state for removing licensure. There is zero appetite for that to appear in an amendment or to reappear in any sort of other bill the rest of the session." End quote. Despite that overwhelmingly negative response, Branstad has indicated that, quote, "We're going to continue to look at ways we can deal with it," end quote, even though he's due to head off to China to serve as ambassador. Presumably this means that it will reemerge during Kim Reynolds' tenure as governor when she replaces Branstad. So we recommend you keep an eye on your local legislators, especially since they can't leave abortion alone. Despite the justifiable defeat of a Life Begins at Conception bill, Senate File 53, which prohibits most abortions after 20 weeks, cleared the Human Resources Committee with a vote of 9-3. We'll include an image of the ballot so you know who voted aye on it. It's not clear if it has enough support to pass both the House and Senate, so we recommend you contact your local legislators to give them your opinion on their interference in private sexual decisions, particularly if they're the party of small government. And a special update. As I was prepping this broadside, Trump rolled out his revised Muslim ban executive order, which is initially notable for dropping Iraq from the enemies list. As one reads through it further, we find that it's basically written with the intent of addressing criticism of the previous ban and presumably heading off any further litigation by, well, takesies-backsies. Plus, the tone of the section that uses Article 2 of the Constitution to argue that the president totally has the power to keep out foreigners sounds a lot like, "We could have won in court, but we didn't want to waste time and money." Presumably that money saved will help with the expense of Trump's weekend trips to Mar-a-Lago. There's no end of shit to keep track of with this administration. Hell, as we were prepping to record this podcast, they unleashed their, quote, "plan" to replace Obamacare. We'll have more specifics after we've had time to examine it more closely, but as near as we can tell from first glance, the two biggest issues are, 1, without the mandate, there's no money, and 2, unless you're young, healthy, and wealthy, you're fucked. It's a good thing none of the red staters who voted for Trump are old, sick, or poor, because they'd be in some serious... Oh, wait.
The sleep of reason brings forth monsters.
I'm a whiner, and I keep whining and whining until I win.
Maybe somebody will rise up.
We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty.
Welcome to Swing State, an aggressive, progressive, critical, and political podcast from the middle of the Midwest.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Swing States. We've got a big Russia show for you here today because in case you haven't been reading the news lately, Donald Trump has got some problems, some serious problems. In fact, he has 7 of them that are walking, talking human beings who seem to have been discussing things with Russians despite his statements to the contrary during the campaign. And of course, the first major story that broke was a while back. It was Michael Flynn. So Michael Flynn resigned as the National Security Advisor when it was discovered that he had lied to the vice president about communications with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak. Subsequently, we also discovered that he may have misled the FBI during an interview, which is even more serious than lying to Mr. Pence and letting him down.
Well, let me just say that he may have misled the FBI, which I think most people would say is probably a lie to the FBI, which is literally a crime.
But since we don't write for Breitbart here, we're going to let nature take its course on this one and just say that if Mr. Flynn did in fact mislead the FBI, if he did in fact lie to the FBI, and they ever decide to pursue that, he is in a world of shit because you cannot do that. It is illegal to mislead the FBI. At best, it's obstruction, and perhaps worse, depending on what he's caught up in here.
So this is where I guess we have to start using the word allegedly a lot today.
Yes, we might as well call this the allegedly episode. Well, allegedly, 7 people in Donald Trump's immediate orbit, at least 7 actually, because there are more of them that we just sort of let get swept under the rug because they're obvious ones, like Rex Tillerson at State. He's a friend of Vladimir Putin.
They have an association. That's not even something anybody pretends isn't real.
Yeah, right. So you can start with that one. But then beyond that, the Washington Post has compiled a list of these links, and they basically include the following people. Donald Trump himself, of course, his businesses, his son has indicated in the past a lot of their cash flow has come from Russia.
Yeah, the specific quote is actually, quote, Russians make up a pretty disproportionate cross-section of a lot of our assets, end quote, and that, quote, we see a lot of money pouring in from Russia, end quote. That's Donald Trump Jr. being quoted as saying, yeah, we get money from Russia.
Yeah, and it looks like also Jared Kushner took a meeting in Trump Tower with the Russian ambassador as well. So that is two people in his immediate family. We also know that Ivanka has been to Russia in different places many times, and they may have other business dealings there that are not entirely clear yet. But his whole family seems to in some way be connected to Russia. And then beyond that, we talked about Flynn, Jeff Sessions, who we'll return to in a moment because he stepped in a big pile of dog shit this last week or so. But it keeps going. Paul Manafort, the former campaign manager, Wilbur Ross, the Secretary of Commerce, Roger Stone, a longtime advisor who this past couple days, he tweeted out that he had a back channel to Julian Assange of WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks is basically just a front for the Kremlin at this point. They disseminate Russian propaganda as it is fed to them. Carter Page, he's been going on a whirlwind media tour of embarrassing, ridiculous, smiling interviews where he sits across from people like Anderson Cooper or Chris Hayes, and you can just see him laboring under the spotlight to lie and spin and try and make his statements sound lawyerly, while at the same time basically admit that he's misled every interviewer previous to the one he's sitting in front of now. Please go Google Carter Page and watch a couple of these interviews. The bigger ones that he did were Chris Hayes on MSNBC and Anderson Cooper on CNN.
And he's been quoted as addressing several Russian business groups in that country, including twice just in 2016. Over a decade ago, according to this article, he was an investment banker working in Russia. I mean, the very nature of his career indicates connections with Russia. You can't avoid that. There's not even any, well, no, I don't really know anybody. You were a fucking investment banker in Russia. You know people in Russia.
Oh, yeah, he knows people in Russia. Moving on, right on down the list we go. There's also J.D. Gordon.
He used to be a Pentagon spokesman. He was also a campaign advisor. He, like a lot of the guys on here, spoke with Kislyak at the RNC convention. So there's obviously a connection. How do you not have conversations involving politics when you're at a fucking political convention with a Russian ambassador?
Well, that's probably a good place to wheel back to Jeff Sessions. So right now we've just listed a bunch of people who have, potentially innocent contacts with people in Russia. I mean, there's no crime against talking to a Russian person. You do need to be aware that in the Russian system, if you're talking to an ambassador, like any other ambassador of a major state, they are in a way gathering intelligence. They are an agent of the Russian state, and even more so in Russia, because that's just the Vladimir Putin KGB/FSB run system that they have. All of their ambassadors are constantly doing anything they can to gather intelligence. So you need to be aware of who you're talking to. But Jeff Sessions, this is where the story really starts to break open and get weird. Because Jeff Sessions, during his confirmation hearing, he did something very strange when being questioned by Senator Al Franken. And we'll play the clip for you.
CNN just published a story alleging that the intelligence community provided documents to the president-elect last week that included information that, quote, Russian operatives claimed to have compromising personal and financial information about Mr. Trump. These documents also allegedly stated, quote, there was a continuing exchange of information during the campaign between Trump surrogates and intermediaries for the Russian government. If there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians.
And so what's very strange about that is, if you notice, Jeff Sessions, he was not asked whether he personally had contact with the Russians during the campaign, but nevertheless, that's the question he decided to answer. He actually volunteered, I have had no such communications with the Russians, when he was asked something completely different, and it turns out that was a lie. And that is why Jeff Sessions is in the shit he's in this week, and that's why people are accusing him of perjury, and that's why he's had to recuse himself, is because he apparently lied during his confirmation hearing about communications with the Russians.
I did not have communications with the Russians. Let me repeat that. I did not have communications with the Russians. As we all know now, that wasn't true. Attorney General Sessions met at least twice with the Russian ambassador in 2016, once in July, an event during the Republican National Convention, and once in September in a private meeting in his Senate office. But Attorney General Sessions did not acknowledge the fact that his testimony misrepresented the truth until the Washington Post published an article exposing his meetings with the Russian ambassador. In the 7 weeks between his appearance before this committee and the publication of that article, Attorney General Sessions had ample opportunity to come clean and correct the record, but that's not what he did. So after an embarrassing story in the Post describing undisclosed meeting with the very same Russian official whose communications forced the president's national security advisor to resign, Attorney General Sessions hastily called a press conference and announced that he would recuse himself from overseeing any Justice Department investigation into Russian interference with the election.
One of the guys we've mentioned in several cases who's sort of the connection here is this Russian diplomat Kislyak. And the fact that he's a Russian, all right, fine. He's a Russian diplomat, all right, fine. Again, these guys will have various business dealings with Russia. However, according to a CNN article, U.S. intelligence officials consider Kislyak a spy and a recruiter. Now, obviously, Russia's Foreign Affairs Ministry denies that, because what the fuck else are they going to do? But our U.S. intelligence agencies consider this guy an intelligence agent. I mean, there's no other way around it. So it's not just a matter of, well, they met with this ambassador or they met with this diplomat. He's a guy that the U.S. intelligence agencies consider a spy and a recruiter.
At the very least, it makes the act of lying about meeting with him that much more suspicious. So you're telling me you didn't have any meetings with this guy or this type of person specifically,
right,
when in fact you did.
Right. And he's a guy that we sort of have some suspicions about, which then adds further to this suspicion about whatever American is meeting with him.
And to put it in context, when Jeff Sessions met with this guy back in, it was at the RNC convention, then in September, Jeff Sessions takes a meeting with Sergei Kislyak in his office. He can't supposedly recall the details of this conversation, although here he is recalling the details of that conversation.
Just to clear up any confusion over this, could you just explain a little bit about the September 8th meeting, who on your staff was there, and what was discussed with the Russian ambassador?
The Russian ambassador apparently sent a staffer to my office. I did not see him, and asked for a meeting, as so many of the ambassadors were doing. And we set up a time, as we normally did. And we met with him. Two of my senior staffers were there, and maybe a younger staff or two. And they both retired Army colonels and not politicians. And we had we listened to the ambassador and to what his concerns might be. Well, it was just normal things, such as I started off by saying, I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember saying I'd gone to Russia with a church group in 1991, and he said he was not a believer himself, but he was glad to have church people come there. Indeed, I thought he was pretty much of an old-style Soviet-type ambassador. And so we talked about a little bit about terrorism, as I recall. And somehow the subject of the Ukraine came up. I had the Ukrainian ambassador in my office the day before, and to listen to him, nothing that Russia had done nothing that was wrong in any area, and everybody else was wrong with regard to the Ukraine. It got to be a little bit of a testy conversation at that point. It wrapped up. He said something about inviting me to have lunch. I did not accept that, and that never occurred. I don't recall, but most of these ambassadors are pretty gossipy, and they liked, this was in the campaign season, but I don't recall any specific political discussions. All right.
Do you recall meeting with Ambassador Kislyak any other times?
I don't recall having many. It's possible. I'm on Armed Services Committee and things happen, but I don't recall having met him before those 2 meetings.
So here we have Jeff Sessions remembering highly specific details about a meeting with a person who I hear tell in Washington makes a bit of an impression. He's an interesting character. But you can't recall anything talking to him about the campaign.
Well, you made the comment that it was sort of odd that he responded the way he did, which was, hey, I'm going to ask you about these guys. What do you think about that? Oh, I didn't have anything to do with that. If you remember Trump's press conference, he basically answered in a very similar manner. When asked, did your people know about, or did they have contact with, his response was, well, I didn't know anything about that, or I didn't have any contact.
Yeah, at this point, you almost think that Sergei Kislyak must have magical powers because no one who talks to him can remember what they talk about.
Yeah, he's like some sort of hypnotist or something.
Yeah, you don't remember talking about the Russian sanctions.
The thing that I think is just sort of unavoidable about this, and Sessions is just the most obvious example, is that this entire Russian thing saturates Trump's administration. It just simply does. The connections exist. And part of the problem for him is that this could potentially be easily remedied by saying, here are my tax returns, here's the proof, I don't have any financial ties to Russia. Everything's totally cool. Except he won't do that because, I would guess, we're going to find that he has fucking Russian hands in his pockets.
Well, and that's an excellent point. And Trumpkins, if you're listening, this is the part where if you're the president of the United States, you're supposed to say, I will fully cooperate with any investigation. I absolutely had no collusion or ties or relationship with Russian officials or Russian spies during the election. None of my people did, etc. and so forth. A stonewall denial. Instead, what are we getting? We're getting the 5-year-old with the hand in the cookie jar response. No, I didn't. What? Never heard of that.
I did not have relations with that nation.
No one's had relations with those Russians near as we can tell, except they all are on record as having done so. And then, of course, Donald Trump one day wakes up and finds himself besieged by this criticism, the questions, the probing, the digging, the press articles, the bad news he just can't shut out. And so what does he do? Who does he turn to blame?
Comrades, do you know who is responsible for this? Do you know the enemy who has come in the night and overthrown our windmill? Snowball! He suddenly roared in a voice of thunder. Snowball has done this thing. In sheer malignity, thinking to set back our plans and avenge himself for his ignominious expulsion, this traitor has crept here under cover of night and destroyed our work of nearly a year.
For those of you unfamiliar with the audio clip that we just heard, that is from Orwell's Animal Farm. And it's Napoleon, the pig who's essentially dominating the farm now, blaming an incident of sabotage on his predecessor, Snowball, who has basically been exiled, has left the farm, as far as everyone knows. The reason we chose that clip is pretty straightforward, because Donald Trump is unhinged, much like Napoleon, and one of the examples that we have for that is his fucking tweets about Obama wiretapping Trump Tower during the campaign. Now, some of you may have heard about this already. In fact, I would be surprised if you didn't, because, first of all, it feels like a fucking distraction from the shit we were just talking about, which is the Russian connection. The second thing is, like a lot of shit Trump says, it's unfounded. It's unsubstantiated. There's legitimately no reason to think there's any truth to it. In fact, so much so that FBI Director Comey basically had the Justice Department issue a statement rebutting the claim.
He asked them to, but they refused to do it.
Which is fucking insane that it would even reach that state.
Well, and it is insane because the President of the United States does not order wiretaps on fellow American citizens willy-nilly. If there was a FISA order, that is something different. That means that somehow agents of the FBI or the NSA or the CIA or perhaps foreign intelligence tipping off the agencies I just mentioned, they feel that there is some evidence or something to suggest criminal or nefarious activities with a foreign power. The CIA and the NSA cannot listen in on an American citizen without such an order, even if they're monitoring, say, somebody from a foreign nation that they do suspect. The minute an American gets on the line, they have to hang up the phone. What I'm saying here is that if Donald Trump's claim here that Obama personally had him wiretapped is insane. If he was wiretapped because of a FISA court order, that means a judge saw probable cause. As Malcolm Nance has said in the past, that's the MSNBC commentator who is a former spy. If it's reached the point where the FBI or anybody is asking for a FISA warrant to monitor somebody else or an American citizen, you're in pretty deep shit already. They've got something, and that's what Trump's behavior is so easily explained if you simply include the assumption probably the FBI's got something he doesn't want them to have. He's getting buggy, as Malcolm Nance says.
If there is any evidence of wiretapping of Trump Tower, it can only have happened following a specific chain of events, all of which are predicated on reasonable suspicion. If it's not true, I mean, the fact that Obama did it, that's already untrue. I mean, that's straight up. That's not how that works.
I suppose it's hypothetically possible that Obama went insane and demanded some private party to wiretap, but beyond that, no, it's crazy.
Right. So what that basically says is one of a couple of things. If none of this is true, there is no wiretapping, and he just says this unsubstantiated thing. One, as we suggested, it's just a distraction away from Russia. Look over there, jingly keys.
And a lie. And a lie, what's more.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just sort of a given. I guess I should have made that point that is, in fact, a lie. I am just so accustomed, I guess, to him saying stuff that's blatantly untrue and ridiculous. I guess I forgot I needed to qualify that.
Well, yeah, I mean, if Obama, this is what makes the story so strange, because if it's true that Obama ordered him or somehow personally ordered this wiretap or was conspiring to make it happen, that is one of the biggest controversies in American history also.
Sure, so, and that would certainly warrant investigation.
Right, but to yank it out of his ass is an incredible act of immorality and just it's unpresidential.
Right. Well, what it is it's like early in the campaign when he would latch onto whatever ridiculous bullshit was out there in right-wing blogosphere about Obama, whether it was his fucking birth certificates or whatever other shit, Michelle's actually a man, whatever other ridiculous.
He's no stranger to the InfoWars conspiracy theory circuit.
Sure, but if he genuinely thinks it's true, even if it's unfounded, it's another reminder of something we've said before, which is he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, because he should know that the president can't do that. Even if you were to say something that Obama would take the unprecedented step of going directly to the FBI or the NSA or whomever and saying, I want you to fucking do this. The only way it works is with a fucking warrant, which means there are steps in between Obama saying, I want to do that, and it actually getting done. And the only thing I can think is, as I mentioned before, Trump doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He doesn't know what he's talking about because he doesn't know shit about the position he's in. Or he really thinks that's because that's how he would operate, that's how that works. Because we all know that that's basically how Trump has been a, quote, businessman. He decides something, and he tells somebody to go make that shit happen. And I think if he really thinks Obama did that or could do that, it not only shows that he doesn't know anything about the position, but he's essentially revealed something about how he himself thinks.
Well, he's revealed a lot more than that, too, because his lawyer is apparently going around, the House counsel is going around calling the FBI, calling the NSA, trying to find out if there is, in fact, a FISA order, and if so, what have they dug up? Which is, I mean, that is the clearest instance of meddling in an ongoing investigation I've ever heard of. I mean, I'm just trying to think, I'm trying to think of, like, an example. It's kind of like the scene in The Wolf of Wall Street where Jordan Belfort has the FBI agent on his boat and thinks he's being smart by digging and trying to bribe the guy and find out what he's investigating. And, well, I think Trump is probably going to find out the same thing that Jordan Belfort found out, which is that, they're smart, you're dumb. You're going to actually make it worse. And the funny thing about this whole a self-generated scandal born of a conspiracy, Trump has actually drawn more attention to the Russia business, more attention to this steaming pile of shit than otherwise would have been there already. And he's made it worse by doing this. It's just, it's totally incredible.
He's not even good at jingling keys.
No.
Okay? He's not even good at providing a distraction. Because if you're going to provide a distraction away from the Russian story, you should probably not focus on something that's going to draw laser beam-like focus back on the Russia story. Because why else would there have been a wiretap? Because of Trump's relationships with Russia.
Oh, and we probably should mention that a lot of serious people do believe, in fact, there were FISA orders. I believe there was reporting in The Guardian to this effect. So if he or his campaign has been talking to Russia, has been dealing with Russia, if there have been bank transfers from Russia, they could be in some serious, serious shit. And it's interesting that right now James Comey is being very, very tight-lipped about what he has, even with the Senate Intelligence Committee. So they've asked for specific instances of things. He's refused to give them at this time. I don't think he's trying to cover anything up, but everything about this situation makes me keep asking what's going on here.
Right. And Comey being tight-lipped, yeah, I suppose it's possible it's part of a cover-up. Most likely what it is for once, he's behaving like a real investigator, and he's keeping his fucking mouth shut about an ongoing investigation.
Exactly.
You know, I know he sort of had that lapse in judgment near the end of the campaign, where he was issuing statements about emails. Okay, fine, that was still bullshit, but I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and actually assume that he's not covering up, that what he's doing is being a responsible investigator. But speaking of that campaign and Hillary and shit like that, that's one of the other things that I think we were going to sort of talk about a little bit, which is the sort of knee-jerk response that Trump and his minions still have when their misdeeds are pointed out to them, which is essentially, well, what about Hillary? Or what about Obama? What about them?
Oh, they have got a bad case of the but Hillarys on Twitter these days. It's amazing because it's the only response you tend to get from the Trump brigade.
Right.
When you start to bring up, well, the president said none of my people had any contacts with Russians, that I know of during the campaign. Turns out 7 of them did. Say, well, Jeff Sessions lied under oath about this issue. Well, but, like Obama's never done anything wrong.
Next time that you hear somebody say, but Hillary, or but Obama, I want you to hear, but
Snowball!
Like the fact that somebody would even make that argument at all in response to the gravity of what we're talking about here.
Right. The gravity of what we're talking about here. That's the thing I don't think anybody seems to be taking seriously. If the allegations are true and there was wiretapping, it was not without reason.
Yeah.
And if it was not without reason, it means that you have a president currently in office who potentially has colluded with a foreign power. Not only a foreign power, but one of the few legitimate threats that still exist in terms of foreign power.
And regardless of which person in this web that you're looking at, whether it's Jeff Sessions or Carter Page or Roger Stone or Trump himself, every time you look at one of them, the story gets worse and worse and worse because they keep talking. So Jeff Sessions, he pretends that, I thought they were talking about something else in the confirmation hearing. This guy is the Attorney General of the United States, a lifelong lawyer. He knows that when you're under oath, you have to speak very, very carefully, that every single one of your answers is subject to scrutiny. The dissemination that came afterward that we already played in the clip, I mean, it made the situation worse. Carter Page, when he goes on MSNBC and then he goes on CNN afterward, his story keeps changing and evolving all the time. So the gravity of what we're talking about here, the reason that it's so serious is that all of these people seem to have 5 different stories to tell, and none of them seem to know anything, and they don't remember talking to the guy. It's just very suspicious.
If you look at Sessions' responses when he's talking to Leahy, there's an entire PDF which I can link to. Most of his responses are, I can't speak to that, I haven't investigated that, I haven't, he hedges, or he does what you do in this position, which is provide as little actual information as possible. That's just sort of how that works. And he's hedging his bets in the way that you do when somebody asks you, can you tell me this? Well, no, I can't because of this thing, and these are the reasons why. That's a reasonable response from somebody who knows the law and how you respond to stuff. But when somebody asks you, hey, do you know about this? I had nothing to do with that. Wait, what?
Again, that's every time somebody comes up to the camera or to the microphone or the press conference to respond, the story gets weirder. They're always raising more questions. And Trump's his refusal at this point to simply declare that we will be cooperating with any investigations into these matters and providing all the information. They're not only not doing that, he's having his House counsel calling around to the FBI and the NSA. You've also had these same folks asking the FBI and the Senate Intelligence Committee to rebuff rumors that they had been in constant contact with the Russian intelligence agents. So that was before. And then now they're also calling to see if there's any FISA warrants or trying to find out any information also called meddling in an ongoing investigation that you may in fact be the subject of.
Do you have anything on us is basically what they're saying.
The behavior here is extremely sketchy. It's exactly what people do when they think they're about to get caught. They're going here, there, everywhere. Trump is throwing out distraction bombs based on shit he's pulling out of his ass or pulling out of Breitbart, which is really the same thing.
This gets a lot of comparisons to Nixon, which is the shit that Nixon did was ethically questionable and probably illegal and a variety of other things. The reason it became such a problem was the cover-up and the discovery of the cover-up and all the efforts they put into it. And that's what we're looking at here. Now, even if you could argue that all of these connections with Russia were just innocent, sure, fine, whatever, they have the veneer of impropriety. There's no avoiding it. And it goes directly to Trump's credibility and his cabinet's credibility, that they cannot be trusted.
If no crime has been committed, they are not acting like innocent people. They're acting like they're guilty of something. We are in the midst, apparently, of a cover-up.
The refrain that the right often has whenever the left argues about questionable investigations into things is, well, if you're innocent, you don't have anything to hide.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
You know, anytime surveillance comes up, well, if you're innocent, you don't have anything to hide. Okay, well, if you're innocent, you don't have anything to hide. Fucking show them everything. Dump out the goddamn tax returns. Announce that you're going to fucking cooperate. I believe you mentioned that before. That would certainly alleviate things and would certainly help his credibility. I don't think he can do that, and that's part of the problem. He can't even admit there's a possibility that there's anything wrong, whether it's ego or criminal activity or whatever the hell it is. He just can't do it. But any politician who actually knew anything about being a politician would tell you that's the shit you need to do. You need to tell them, hey, we're totally going to cooperate whether you fucking cooperate or not. You need to tell the public you're going to cooperate. You need to tell all those fucking hillbillies that still support you, yeah, we're totally going to cooperate and we're going to be vindicated.
That's why this is just, it seems to be getting worse and worse and worse and not better, because Jeff Sessions, he's quasi-cooperating. Al Franken wanted him to come back in person before the Senate committee, the same people that he talked to when he initially perjured himself. But instead, he's only going to do it through written questions. General Flynn appears that he may have misled the FBI, so he is potentially exposed to some legal consequences. And it sounds like he will eventually be testifying before some committee. It's going to take time for these things to come together. Sessions has recused himself. Donald Trump's got to be furious about that, because now he can't control the FBI and their investigations like he probably wants to, and apparently his counsel is at least trying to gather information so that he could participate in cover-up. I don't know what else would you want to know that information for, if not to try and dismiss it somehow. But all of this is to say that this Russia story is Lewayne and I can tell you just from trying to read through all of it and understand all of it, it's a mess right now. But the thing is that it's not a mess that leads to a bunch of, well, this doesn't really connect, it doesn't really fit. All of it seems to fit. That's what's so weird about it, is that if you just look at the timeline of the WikiLeaks drops and the different statements from advisors who appeared to know about these things in advance, a lot of odd comments from people like Rudy Giuliani and others throughout the campaign, and you look at the timing of things, for instance, when the GOP suddenly became very pro-Russia on their platform as it pertains to Crimea, incidentally happened shortly after Jeff Sessions met with Kislyak. Now, this isn't proof. It's just when you put their behavior in the context of what happened, and we were attacked by a foreign power. Our election was cyber attacked. American citizens had their information stolen and deliberately released in a very politically strategic way so as to give Donald Trump an advantage. That right there is already confirmed. All of our intelligence agencies say exactly that. And the response from Donald Trump has been fucking mystifying.
It's not even been 2 full fucking months that he's been president.
I know, it's unbelievable.
And this is where we are. There's no way we can take this guy seriously. There's no way we cannot resist this.
No one is going to drop this until a full, independent investigation has taken place, and no American citizen should be without this information. You should all know what Trump's connections to Russia are.
Until next time, watch out for the jingly keys, keep your eye on the opposition, and as always, organize, mobilize, protest,
vote.